Oh, good morning, folks. This is Doc Patterson coming to you from my bedroom. It's just too cold out here in Mississippi right now to be out in my shop. I don't have any heat out there. Uh, and I don't have any real good place to film. So at any rate, this is what we got, okay? And we'll work with it. Our lesson for this week comes to us from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verses 27 through 38. And we're going to talk about some things that Jesus teaches us to do that are just not natural for human beings to do. They're very hard to do. But first of all, let's talk about reciprocity for just a minute. Reciprocity is when your pal doesn't wish you a happy birthday on Facebook, so you forget to wish them a happy birthday on Facebook. It's simple justice. Okay? Do unto others as they do unto you. And it's not only simple justice, it's been around for a long, long time. A form of this justice code was found in the Code of Hammurabi that was established in the 18th century BC. Folks, that's 3,800 years ago. Now, that notion, and the Code of Hammurabi put it this way: an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was their illustration for it. Now, you get into the Hebrew Bible, or what we call the Old Testament. The Mosaic Law took that particular simple form of justice, and they called it a kofar. And so what they did was they allowed for money to be a replacement for, let's say, somebody poked your eye out. Well, under Old Testament law, you could either poke their eye out, or you could get them to pay you $10,000 or whatever it is to compensate for it. A little more currently, I say a little more currently, coming forward to the turn of time, the Jewish philosopher Philo, who was a contemporary of Jesus, but he lived in Alexandria, Egypt, wrote this: "What you hate to suffer, do not do to anyone else." Same simple command. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus, again, he was a contemporary of Jesus who lived in Rome, and he wrote, "What you do not wish to be done to yourself, do not do to any other person." Well, obviously, Jesus was not the author of this command of justice, but what he did do that was original was change the command from the negative to the positive. He said, you folks should do first to others what you would have them do unto you. That is to say, if you want people to do good things to you and give good things to you and treat you well, then you need to do that first to them. You need to be good to them. You need to give them good things. You need to treat them well first. But as Jesus typically does, he goes beyond that. And he teaches here that reciprocity in and of itself is not a kingdom behavior. It's not just exchanging bad for bad. You didn't remember my birthday, so I'm not going to remember your birthday. Reciprocity includes exchanging good for good. And here's what he says in this passage. He says, if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. Now, Jesus takes a completely different approach. His first principal command here regarding justice is love your enemies. Love your enemies. Now, loving your enemies, I got to tell you, folks, it's just not natural. It's not natural. It's really hard to do. But Jesus does give us some instruction on this. He gives 3 different applications that apply to everyone. We know that he intends for this to apply to everyone because he uses the plural of you in the Greek. Here's what those things are in what I would call Southern talk. First of all, y'all do good to those that hate you. Secondly, make sure you bless those folks that cuss you out. And 3, pray hard for those people. You know, Jesus knew quite a few folks that were in the crowd that were there, gathered there on that day. And he knew the kind of lives they lived. So he had some special instructions for a few of them individually. We know this because he stops using the plural you in the Greek and starts using the singular you. I can just see him fixing his gaze on Susie and poking Joe in the shoulder and shaking his head at Ralph. He says to Susie, the lady that slapped you on the cheek, you should have asked her if she wanted to smack the other one as well. And he reminded Joe of the guy who took his cloak, and he said, you should have asked him if he needed your coat too. And Ralph, he says, the neighbor that borrowed your shovel, I'm glad you let him have it, but don't expect to get it back. Folks, the command to love your enemies is about actions, not feelings. The vast majority of people out there in our society today base the amount of love they have for their fellow human beings on feelings or opinions or prejudice. Listen to me. Don't allow people of lesser principles to set the agenda. You seize the initiative and love them as Christ loves them, even if you don't like them. Is it hard to do? You bet. Because it's just not natural. We're human beings. We're bound by our human limitations, and one of our limitations is a bent toward sin. So it's just not natural for us to do that. And I'll tell you something else that Jesus taught that's not natural. He said in this passage that we should all be merciful. Merciful. Mercy. What is mercy? Very simply, mercy means not giving to another person the punishment they deserve. And again, Jesus gives 3 instructive applications. The first of those applications that Jesus gives on being merciful is don't judge. Let me tell you a little story. True story. Several weeks back, I took my van to the shop for some routine maintenance. And a young man pulled my van into the work bay. When he got out of the van, he asked me if I did a lot of camping. He had noticed the cot that I have in the back and the equipment as well. But right away, I saw that he had pierced his tongue and had a big silver stud in it. I immediately judged that this was not a human being with a refined decision-making process. And I have to be honest with you, I wanted and I felt I deserved the right to request a different mechanic. And then Jesus poked his finger into my shoulder. And folks, this is the truth. I heard the mechanic in the next bay over, who was waist deep in the motor compartment of the car say out loud, "Mercy me." Well, I let Silver Stud do the work. The van's been running fine. And I recorded that little episode into my voice recorder on my phone to use in a lesson at a later date. Don't judge. Be merciful. Well, the second application that Jesus gives regarding mercy is don't condemn. Let me make this short and to the point. If you're not the judge, and you're not, Jesus makes that clear, if you're not the judge, then you have no authority, no standing, and no rights at all to condemn and punish anyone for anything. Don't condemn. Be merciful. The third application regarding mercy is this: set others free, and you will be free. Now, many Bible scholars believe this instruction is about forgiveness. You know, we've learned forgive others and you will be forgiven. And I have no problem with that perspective. But this instruction is so much bigger than just the notion of forgiveness. We love to judge and condemn people for having the wrong ideology, for belonging to the wrong political party, for going to the wrong church, for having the wrong theology, for worshiping Jesus differently than we do, for driving a Chevrolet, or for cutting their grass too short, and the list continues. If we would set people free to figure out and own their own ideology, to join whatever political party they choose, to attend any church they want, for theologizing differently than you do, for worshiping with their hands in the air, for driving whatever make of automobile gets them there and back, and for cutting the grass using sheep. If we would set them free to do that, we would be set free from judging and condemning them. Set others free, and you will be free. I can almost hear the mechanic saying, "Mercy me." Loving our enemies and being merciful are hard things to do. They are. They're just not natural. But Jesus said if we work at it, if we're truly intentional about treating others first the way we want to be treated, we will be rewarded for our behavior with more goodness than we can manage. That goodness, packed tightly, will still spill out of our largest behavior containers and run onto the floor of our daily existence where everyone can see it. Jesus put it this way. He said, "Give, and it will be given unto you, a good portion, pressed down, shaken together, running over into your lap and on to the floor." Folks, maybe it's time for us to get to work. And that's the long and the short of it. See you next time.